First at 9 this Friday, the 4th of April 2025. The tariff war. China retaliates with 34% reciprocal tariffs on US goods, responding to the new tariffs announced by the US just yesterday. US President Donald Trump signals openness to negotiations, stating the US would consider tariff reductions in return for phenomenal offers.
It depends. If somebody said that we're going to give you something that's so phenomenal, as long as they're giving us something that's good.
Big Brother diplomacy. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives in Sri Lanka. PM Modi is set to finalize key agreements on security, healthcare and digital transformation during his visit. Digital drive. Sri Lanka signs a pivotal agreement with Japan for the detailed design of the digital terrestrial television broadcasting project. Re-acceptance. Court of Appeal orders nearly 37 local government election nomination papers rejected over technicalities to be re-accepted. Supreme Court meanwhile dismisses 53 writ applications and 6 fundamental rights petitions.
Chilo Dairy, Sri Lankawama Kiren Perata. ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
කණ්ඩ පරිස්සම් කරගත්තොත් අපි පරිස්සම්.
ඉතින් මොකටද නිකන් නාගන්නේ? ස්වදේශී කොහොඹ ලෙමන් ග්‍රාස් අද කාලෙට ෆ්‍රෙෂ්ම විසඳුම.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9. I'm Aditya Adrisinghe joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world, brought to you by the only Sri Lankan media network to rise to the pinnacle across all media platforms, recognized as the best by every survey and beloved by the people. Now on your top story tonight, a day after US President Donald Trump slapped sweeping tariffs on friends and foes alike, some strong reactions from major powers are sparking a global trade war. Sri Lanka, facing 44% tariffs on goods exported to the US, fears a significant negative impact on the apparel industry, the largest Sri Lankan export to the US, and severe risks to a number of jobs in the industry. The Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, the apex body representing the local private sector, said the new tariffs pose a significant challenge to the country's trade and economic stability. While Sri Lanka has appointed a committee to assess the tariffs and to look to negotiate with the United States, President Donald Trump signaled he is open to negotiating tariffs if other nations offer something phenomenal in return. US President Donald Trump, through an executive order, signed in a host of new reciprocal tariffs on all countries conducting business with the United States, matching tariffs nations impose on American goods. Accordingly, a universal 10% tariff will take effect on 5th of April 2025 for all countries. However, countries with significant trade deficits with the US face higher individualized tariffs starting the 9th of April. Among countries facing higher US tariffs, Lesotho tops the list with a 50% tariff, followed by Cambodia at 49% and Vietnam at 46%. Sri Lanka faces a 44% tariff, among the top 10 most heavily taxed nations under the new Trump administration policy. Approximately $2.9 billion worth of goods are purchased by the US from Sri Lanka, accounting for close to 25% of the island's total exports. Apparel and textiles comprise 65% of Sri Lankan exports to the US, followed by rubber and rubber-based products and coconut-based products. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka's imports from the US stand at approximately $370 million. With the news of tariff imposition, Sri Lanka's President Anura Dissanayake appointed a high-level 10-member committee yesterday to analyse the potential challenges posed by the new reciprocal tariffs and to present recommendations to the government. Meanwhile, according to the Deputy Minister of Finance, Professor Anil Jayantha, the Sri Lankan government plans to negotiate with US officials to reduce tariffs before they come into effect on the 9th of April. Reacting to the development, Sri Lanka's apex business chamber, the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, expressed deep concern while calling for urgent action to counter the consequences. Highlighting the significant challenge to the country's trade and economic stability, the CCC emphasized that it is vital for Sri Lanka to negotiate down from the high tariff band, especially considering that the country is currently midway through an International Monetary Fund program. It is also noted that this is an opportune moment for the government to reassess Sri Lanka's tariff structure and to implement measures to improve trade facilitation and ease of doing business. Sri Lanka's apparel industry, which expects to be hit hard by the new tariffs, said that the tariffs faced by Sri Lanka are extremely high relative to regional competitors. Sri Lanka's top apparel competitor countries include Bangladesh, Vietnam and India. Bangladesh was slapped with a 37% tariff, still lower than Sri Lanka's tariff, and Vietnam's at 46%. India is hit with a lower 27%. Johan Lawrence, Secretary General of the Joint Apparel Association Forum, warns that Sri Lanka could very quickly see the share of US businesses shift to countries with lower tariffs. He noted that this volume of business for Sri Lanka cannot simply be replaced through other markets. He said the situation is serious and must be addressed as a matter of national urgency. Meanwhile, retaliating against the 54% tariffs imposed on their products, China announced it will impose a reciprocal 34% tariff on all imports from the United States starting the 10th of April. As part of retaliatory measures, China also added 11 American companies to its unreliable entity list and imposed export controls on 16 US companies to prohibit the export of Chinese dual-use items. France's President Emmanuel Macron called for European companies to suspend investment in the United States until things are clarified with the United States. Meanwhile, global rating agency Fitch Ratings said that US tariffs have reached levels that are transforming the global economic outlook, while not only raising US recession risks but also deteriorating growth prospects for the rest of the world, particularly in Asia. Issuing a statement, Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, appealed to the United States and its trading partners to work constructively to resolve trade tensions and reduce uncertainty, as tariffs represent a significant risk on the global outlook at a time of sluggish growth. Just today, US President Donald Trump signaled he is open to negotiating tariffs for phenomenal offers he cannot refuse from nations seeking tariff reduction.
It depends. If somebody said that we're going to give you something that's so phenomenal, as long as they're giving us something that's good.
Meanwhile, oil prices plunged by 8%, heading for their lowest close since the middle of the pandemic in 2021. In other markets, global stocks tumbled for a second day and the dollar weakened. S&P 500 companies lost a combined $2.4 trillion in stock market value, their biggest one-day loss since the COVID-19 pandemic hit global markets on the 16th of March 2020.
US tariffs dominated political discourse in Sri Lanka today, with opposition MP Dr. Harsha De Silva claiming that Sri Lanka must engage in a transactional negotiation with the US to drop tariffs. Meanwhile, Minister of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development Sunil Handunetty asserted that Sri Lanka must open up to other global markets and seek trade opportunities elsewhere. Now let's take a look at more thoughts shared on the recent tariff imposition by the US.
The government's foreign policy is flawed. They are not ready to discuss these matters. They are either unaware of geopolitical challenges or they refuse to make themselves aware of it. Because of those reasons, when certain countries take decisions for their benefit, Sri Lankan businesses are crushed. What the government must do is raise awareness regarding Sri Lanka's agenda and turn it to our advantage. I don't think a committee will make a material difference. Our tariffs will never be reduced if we request for such a reduction, citing our IMF agreement. Donald Trump does not work that way. He is transactional. He requires a quid pro quo. That must be basis of our negotiation. We are holding discussions. We have presented our request since this is a shock to us. Just when Sri Lanka started to revive, just when our economy and exchange rate began to stabilize, we were economically shocked. We cannot go in reverse. We held discussions with industrialists and the president has appointed a committee. We will rectify the issue soon. We must also identify various markets globally. India is our neighboring country. The Indian Premier will visit Sri Lanka soon. Investors will arrive in Sri Lanka and set up factories and garments since India lacks those facilities. We can seek the GSP benefit for Sri Lankan exports to Europe. When one door closes, another door must be opened. We must open up to countries including those in Middle East, Japan, South Korea, Russia and Latin American region and those in Africa.
Unfortunately, we had ample time to react to this, but never used the opportunity for a reasonable discussion towards a solution. So as a result, today we have been forced to now pay a tax which is 44% on the imports to the US. It is a very sad situation, but as a nation, we have to come together because this will impact all of our entrepreneurs and the large scale businesses in Sri Lanka and also the employees attached to these businesses.
These tariffs were on the table ever since President Donald Trump took office. Other countries proactively engaged with US officials at various levels to negotiate reductions in tariffs that would be imposed against them. We did nothing. Now we are heading towards an unavoidable trade crisis without proper preparation.
විපක්ෂයේ සිටින කාලේ
When President Anwar Dissanayake served in the opposition, he frequently reached out to US Ambassador Julie Chang whenever significant developments occurred. Now as President, it is his responsibility to engage with the US once again and find a way to reduce these tariffs.
පිරිපුන් ජීවිතයකට ඔබ සමගින් පෙරට Union Assurance.
චන්දුරුසුමේ කාගෙත් මන අපේ සිග TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Prime Minister Dr. Harani Amarasuri attended the 6th BIMSTEC summit held in Thailand and also addressed the Invest Sri Lanka forum on the sidelines of the summit. In the meantime, Foreign Secretary Aruni Ranajaja called on the Thai Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs and engaged in discussions focusing on key areas such as cultural tourism, cultural diplomacy, as well as the expansion of bilateral cooperation between the two nations.
The 6th summit of the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation, or BIMSTEC, kicked off in Thailand today, with representatives from all its member states in attendance. State leaders including Prime Minister Dr. Harani Amarasuri, Indian Premier Narendra Modi and Thai Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra were present during the summit in Thailand. During the summit, BIMSTEC leaders observed a minute of silence remembering lives claimed by the earthquake, which rattled Myanmar and Thailand. On the sidelines of the 6th BIMSTEC summit, Prime Minister Dr. Harani Amarasuri engaged in discussions with Prime Minister of Bhutan, Shering Tobgay, and Nepalese Premier KP Sharma Oli. In the meantime, Dr. Amarasuri also addressed the Invest Sri Lanka Forum, organized in collaboration with the Thai Sri Lanka Chamber of Commerce. The forum served as a platform to highlight Sri Lanka's investment opportunities and foster stronger Sri Lanka-Thai commercial ties. During her visit, Prime Minister Dr. Harani Amarasuri also paid a visit to the historic Wat Phra Temple in Bangkok. Meanwhile, Secretary to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Employment and Tourism Aruni Ranaraja paid a courtesy call on Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of Thailand Laliwan Kanchanachari. Discussions focused on strengthening cultural diplomacy, expanding bilateral cooperation and further deepening the long-standing ties rooted in Theravada Buddhism. Shared commitments aimed at preserving and promoting Buddhist heritage, with a special focus on digitization and translation of the Tripitaka, were discussed at length.
As the highly anticipated local government election looms ahead, the Court of Appeal ordered returning officers to re-accept close to 37 nomination papers rejected over certain technical objections. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court dismissed 53 writ applications and 6 fundamental rights petitions filed over the rejection of nomination papers by returning officers. The country's apex court decided to dismiss those petitions off the back of a preliminary objection raised by the Attorney General, who asserted in court that the Supreme Court lacks the jurisdiction to adjudicate the matter.
Several nomination papers filed by prospective local government election candidates were rejected in multiple local government jurisdictions over a number of technical objections. The technical objections relied upon to reject nomination papers as such included the failure to submit a certified copy of an applicant's birth certificate. Subsequent to the rejection of nomination papers, the Sarvajana Balaya, the United People's Freedom Alliance, several independent groups and other parties filed close to 30 petitions with the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal deliberated the matter for 3 days through a 2-member bench comprising Acting President of the Court of Appeal Justice Mohammad Lafa Tahir and Justice KP Fernando. Rendering judgment on the matter today, the Court of Appeal invalidated the rejection of nomination papers based on issues related to the attestation of copies of birth certificates by Justices of Peace. The Court of Appeal also invalidated the rejection of nomination papers based on issues related to the affidavits submitted. The returning officers in charge of the relevant process were ordered to re-accept close to 37 nominations rejected as such. Meanwhile, the Court of Appeal dismissed 3 petitions filed over the rejection of nomination papers based on issues related to photocopies of the birth certificates annexed with the nomination papers. Against this backdrop, the Supreme Court today dismissed 53 writ applications and 6 fundamental rights petitions filed with the apex court of the country over the rejection of nomination papers filed by prospective candidates of the 2025 local government elections. After deliberating the matter at length, Supreme Court Justice S. Thurai Raja declared the verdict of the court with the consensus of Supreme Court Justices Mahinda Samewardana and Sampath Abekon. When the matter was taken up in court, the Attorney General raised a preliminary objection claiming that the Supreme Court lacked jurisdiction to adjudicate the matter. Considering the objections so raised by the Attorney General, the Supreme Court decided to dismiss the relevant petitions. Meanwhile, the Election Commission ordered the temporary suspension of a seasonal food distribution program organised in view of the upcoming Sinhala Tamil New Year. The Election Commission informed the Secretary to the President and the Ministry of Trade, Commerce and Food Security that the seasonal food packages in question could be distributed after the local government election.
Fast track your career from O-levels with eSoft.
ඩයිබිටිසෝල් සීනිවලින් පරිස්සම් වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
කැලනි වයර් කිසිගින්නක් නෑ.
කිසිගින්නක් නෑ. කැලනි ෆයර් ෂීල්ඩ් වයර්.
Welcome back. You're joining Ada Derana, Sri Lanka's most trusted news source. Now, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi touched down in Sri Lanka a short while ago after departing from Bangkok, Thailand, following his attendance at the 6th BIMSTEC summit. The official ceremony to welcome the Indian Prime Minister will be held tomorrow morning at Independence Square, Colombo. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will engage in bilateral discussions with President Anura Dissanayake and is scheduled to sign several memoranda of understanding on sectors including defence, energy, digitalisation and health.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Sri Lanka this evening for a 3-day official state visit upon an invitation extended by President Anura Dissanayake. Reaffirming the theme Friendship of Centuries, Commitment to a Prosperous Future, Prime Minister Modi's visit aims to strengthen the long-standing bilateral ties between Sri Lanka and India. Streets from Bandaranaike International Airport, Katunayake to Colombo were adorned with decorations to extend a ceremonial welcome. The Indian Prime Minister will be accompanied by a delegation, including the Indian Minister of External Affairs Dr. S. Jaishankar, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri. The official welcoming ceremony for the Indian Prime Minister is scheduled to be held tomorrow morning at Independence Square. Following the welcoming ceremony, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will engage in bilateral discussions with President Dissanayake at the Presidential Secretariat. Memoranda of understanding between the two countries across several fields including defence, energy, digitalisation and health are also due to be signed during the Indian Premier's visit. Accordingly, agreements on the restructuring of Indian debt are also expected to be exchanged. Prime Minister Modi will also virtually inaugurate several India-supported development projects, including the launch of the first phase of the Sampur solar power plant project and the installation of solar panels at 5,000 religious sites across Sri Lanka. The 5,000 metric ton temperature and humidity controlled cold storage facility in Dambulla is also scheduled to be initiated by the Indian Prime Minister. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is scheduled to visit Anuradhapura to pay homage to the sacred Jayasree Ma Bodhi on the 6th of April. He will also formally inaugurate the Maho Anuradhapura railway signalling system and the newly upgraded Maho Omante railway line, both of which were established with assistance from the Indian government. A special traffic plan will be implemented from the evening of the 4th of April to the 6th of April in Colombo. Accordingly, the Colombo-Katunayake Expressway and Baseline Road will be intermittently closed between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. today. Additionally, roads along Golf Face and Independence Square in Colombo and the Apegama area in Battaramulla will be intermittently closed tomorrow. In the meantime, Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka Santosh Jha asserted that relations between Sri Lanka and India have never been stronger, stating the Prime Minister's tour would add a new agenda to the bilateral relationship. The Indian Prime Minister's Sri Lanka tour follows widespread discourse on India's geopolitical influence on Sri Lanka. The defence agreement, which is due to be signed during Prime Minister Modi's visit, has particularly drawn attention, with opposition parties condemning the government for its lack of transparency over the content of the agreement. Prime Minister Modi is scheduled to conclude his official visit and depart from Sri Lanka on the afternoon of the 6th of April.
President Anura Dissanayake pledged government intervention to address recent market abnormalities which have adversely affected farmers as well as the general public. Addressing a gathering in Anuradhapura, President Dissanayake also announced the commencement of an initiative to provide agrochemicals to farmers at concessionary rates.
The 58th National New Paddy Harvest Festival, known as the Alutsal Mangalaya, was held at the historic Jayashree Mahabodhiya in Anuradhapura this morning under the patronage of President Anura Disanayake. All rituals in line with this long-standing tradition, including offering the first harvest paddy this season to the Jayashree Mahabodhiya, was performed. We come from an agricultural background. We have a clear understanding of the issue faced by farmers. I believe we are the only government that is capable of fulfilling the future expectations of the farmers as well as agricultural sector. We are attempting to solve all of these matters. I am sure over 7 billion rupees have been allocated to develop the irrigation system of the Anuradhapura district itself. We are tasked with carrying out relevant development projects before the 31st of December. Therefore, we only have a short period of time to develop the irrigation system. If officials of this district are not sufficient, we expect to bring in officials of other districts in order to expedite the process. There are abnormalities in the market. We are attempting to eradicate these abnormalities. The government expects to intervene on this issue. I request the public to give us some time. We will eradicate these irregularities. We held discussions with officials of Sipetco last week. Thereby, we have commenced an initiative to provide agrochemicals to farmers at a concessionary rate. We believe the unjust price hike of agrochemicals will be regulated after 1 or 2 cultivate seasons.
Leader of the Sarvajana Balaya parliamentarian Dilith Jayavira warns that Sri Lanka's apparel industry will be destroyed if US President Donald Trump's 44% tariffs prevail. He expressed these views at a Sarvajana Balaya awareness program in Nuwara, organized in view of the impending local government elections.
The Nuwara district edition of the island-wide series of awareness programs organized by the Sarvajana Balaya on behalf of its local government election candidates was held today under the patronage of party leader parliamentarian Dilith Jayavira. I have repeatedly mentioned concerns regarding the wages and welfare of estate workers. I have spoken on behalf of them before I engaged in politics. They should not be used to serve anyone. They are the lifeline of the nation. We have warned the government of the tariff threats by President Trump earlier. They did not listen because they have no experience in the sectors of business and economy. They could not foresee the threats. Now the country is ensnared. Sri Lanka has been depending on the apparel sector. The apparel industry of Sri Lanka will be destroyed if the 44% tariffs prevail. Then the country will have to return to tea and rubber industries to recover our export earnings. That is why I suggested a systematic increase to the wages of estate workers to 2,000 rupees. When someone has an entrepreneurial mindset, they would use the remaining hours of their day to improve their lives and to escape from the line houses. The government uses Ambika for propaganda campaign. What solution has been provided to them? Is the government initiating a practical procedure to increase the wages of the estate workers? Take that as an example. This is the only country that has gone from socialism to fabrication. We have to overcome the fabrications of the incumbent government.
Now in other local news, indictments were served on Yoshitha Rajapaksa, the second son of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, and Desi Forest Wickramasinghe, Yoshitha Rajapaksa's grand aunt, in the Colombo High Court today. The indictments were served before Colombo High Court Judge Aditya Patabandige over a case filed under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Following the serving of its indictment, both defendants were released on surety bonds of 500,000 rupees each. The matter will be taken up in court again on the 30th of May this year. Meanwhile, the Criminal Investigation Department launched an investigation into allegations that SLPP national organizer Namal Rajapaksa had fraudulently obtained his attorney-at-law qualification. Accordingly, the probe has been initiated based on a complaint lodged by the Citizens Power against bribery and corruption. The Special Investigation Unit of the CID stated that the inquiry focuses on whether Rajapaksa engaged in fraudulent activities while facing examinations of Sri Lanka Law College. Thereby, the Colombo Chief Magistrates Court was informed that investigations have begun scrutinizing official records from the institution as part of their efforts to verify the claims. Following consideration of relevant submissions, Colombo Chief Magistrate Tanuja Lakmali issued directives to the CID to present a progress report to court. Welcome back. Now, the Sri Lankan government has signed a consultant contract with Japan-based company Yachiyo Engineering for the detailed design of the Japan's digital terrestrial television broadcasting project. The consultant contract was signed between the Secretary to the Ministry of Health and Mass Media, Dr. Anil Jasinghe, and Diageo Engineering. The Embassy of Japan in Sri Lanka noted that the digital terrestrial television broadcasting project is a project that supports transformation to a digital economy, which is the foundation for sustainable economic growth through the effective use of limited and scarce frequencies. US tariffs have rocked Sri Lankan markets during the week, with both ASPI and Sri Lanka S&P 20 losing 2.8 and 4.3%. That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thank you. Have a great night.